Nachos, amigos, and welcome to Record Breakers. It's a music podcast about sharing albums with each other, taking turns, just sharing music, expanding your horizons, and trying new things, kind of. I'm Petey Rave, and with me is my team, my squad, my crew, my quorum. We've got David.
I feel like I shouldn't be here. There should be someone else.
We've got Drew.
Howdy.
Yes, and our guest for this quorum, this round of episodes, sitting in the rotating fourth chair, we've got Patrick.
It's been so long, and yet nothing has changed. And David, you absolutely belong here.
Yes.
I for one welcome you.
Yes. We are all here talking about music. We're here talking about an album, and the provider of the album, since it's the first episode of the round, it's my album, my pick. And I decided, since Patrick was here, I wanted to pick a band that I found out about, I think, at the same exact moment he did, because we were there together. Which was a band from Toronto, Canada. Toronto. Ontarians of good note that we found together at Peelander-Fest in Austin, Texas during South by. And one of the cute things that we experienced together was also Peelander Yellow trying to say their name from how it was spelled. And he went with Kupu Kupu Kupu, which honestly it's
Close
valid.
enough.
It's valid. But
I don't question anything Peelander Yellow does because it's all good for the world.
Yes, it's usually it's probably the correct answer, whether it was
sounds
before
messy.
he said it. Yes, but yes, it's a band by the name of Pkew Pkew Pkew.
I always go with Pkew Pkew Pkew, but I guess you go with Pkew Pkew Pkew.
Pew pew pew. Something like that. Yeah, let's talk about expectations coming into this album. David, what expectations did you have coming into this album?
Looking into Pkew Pkew Pkew, I saw that they were a band from Ontario, and I know that Petey and Swagger found them together. So I imagined there'd be a lot of jumping around and maybe some whoa-oh-ohs, and I figure we'd go from there.
Yep. Drew, what were your expectations coming into this album?
I didn't really have any at first. Seeing the album cover, I had two mindsets. I was like, okay, chubby, shirtless white dude with tattoos. The way he was standing, so it could.
So it's either punk rock or SoundCloud rap.
Yep. Exactly. Actually, I was like, this could either be like, or three ideas. This could be
or a mix of the two, depending.
Right. Yep. I was like, this could be somebody trying to ape Mac Miller, somebody trying to ape Post Malone, or someone who really liked Fat Mike as a kid.
Yes.
I got one of those.
Yes. Let's find out which. Patrick, it's not so much expectations, but what was your excitement level coming into this?
So I haven't done this in a while, but this was an album I have had on basically constant regular rotation since it came out. I probably could have made notes for it without listening to it again. I did, to do it right, but when we saw them at Peelander-Fest, they just and we'll talk about it more as we talk about sort of the music they make. They hit me right in a place of that thing where it harkens back to something old, but also does its own thing. So there's a little bit of like, it's not nostalgia because it's not, from 20 years ago. But oh man, did those kids listen to the same music I did when they were teenagers?
Yes. Yeah, as we dive into this musically, this is very much influenced by like a lot of like punk rock. It is a punk rock record at its core.
If you took all of the punk songs from the first two Tony Hawk Pro Skater games and you put them in a blender, this might come out. It would certainly be on the short list. It is very much of that era.
Yeah, it is very much of that era, very much of the sound. Notably, though, fittingly enough, they also have a song on the most recent Tony Hawk soundtrack,
Yes.
Mid-20s Skateboarder, which is not on this album, but a really fun song. But yeah, it is punk. It is like anthemic punk, like very catchy, very like like party punk touchstones. It has moments where it harkens back to the like times when punk was sort of basically the Beach Boys, but not played well, but like in ways, like those surf rock roots. It is a lot of drinking anthems, a lot of getting wasted and wrecking shit anthems, but also a lot of like, man, I just spent my days getting wasted and wrecking shit. What the hell is my life? Anthems like, and why, comparing yourself to people your age and things like that. So there's like, it kind of takes you on a roller coaster of like celebrating those things, but also actually no, this lifestyle is not good and not useful and not sustainable, and you really should just back out and not hang out with us. Like it dips into those moments, and it does it well. It does it fluidly, and it does it quickly. It doesn't overstay its welcome. It's only like a half an hour of an album. It's punk. What would you expect? But it works well, and it is straightforward party punk. Like it is, I would say, like it harkens back to older genres of punk rock, but it also isn't trying to be lo-fi. It's still recorded well, and it still sounds great, but it is so well done. It is a fun album. David, how would you describe this album musically?
There was something that you said there a second ago, Petey, that is straightforward. I would say that this is straightforward to a fault. It is so straightforward that it's surface level. It's still a half-hour punk rock album, and it's all of those things that you imagine kids that grow up and don't really have a lot of plans after they graduate high school probably think about and talk about. And I guess if that's something you can relate to, that's okay. It's not really a rock album that has any bigger things to say. It's just kind of, it is what it is, as they say. Mm-hmm. And I guess that's okay. I guess if you're into that sort of thing, that's okay.
Mm-hmm. Drew, how would you describe this album? Oh, Drew, you're muted.
Super muted.
I am. I want to describe first an emotion I had when first listening to this, which is anger. The fact that you have not literally handed me this band before either of you, and you both knew about this band, and nobody said, "Hey, Drew, here's this weird band that mixes like the Ramones hot water music and the Strokes together. Like, why don't you listen to this real quick because it's cool. Like, nobody did that. Kind of a dick move, guys. Because it is simple. It's a simple formula. It's a driving beat. It's spiteful, slightly angsty lyrics snarled into a microphone. There's crunchy guitars at times with clean, fun melodies in others. The surf rock influence comes to fold in a few songs for sure. There is at times a nihilism to it that does creep in, like Petey said. Not to the levels of, like, say, a Days and Days sort of, like, nihilism of, like, I'm getting drunk all the time because the world sucks and I want everything to die sort of nihilism. It's not that, if you've ever heard Days and Days. But there's a sort of, like, what am I doing? Whatever.
I don't know. What are you doing?
It's
that was how I felt after this. Like, well, fucking do something then.
But it reminds me of. It reminds me of my youth in a way. It's dive bars and short stages. It's shitty lighting and cigarettes. It's bad beer and sticky floors. It's that sort of, like, it reminds me of, like, when my ears were perk up to other opening bands that we were playing with, it would be stuff like this. It would be, we're going to play music that, like, mixes, like, 5 different bands that we all like a lot and just, like, do that well. And somehow that's exactly what I needed. I will say, listening to it in earbuds while walking around my new workplace, very weird experience. It being a private, like, boarding school, and me walking from building to building, like, feeling like I should be, like, studded leather and, like, fucking
in the pit.
Dickies and, like, yeah, it was weird. That said, not a bad one. So there's that.
Yeah. Patrick, how would you describe this album musically?
It is a modern interpretation and like celebration of 90s skateboard punk. Like, specifically, like you mentioned, like NoFX, Goldfinger, like all the bands from the Tony Hawk soundtrack back in the day. They're on the Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1+2 soundtrack, which is a really, really good remake of the original games. It's what I think I like about it is, so if you go back to, like, let's just take NoFX since they came up. Like, Fat Mike was kind of a problem when he was this age. When he was in his mid-20s, he was a hot mess express, and he was unaware of it. These dudes, like, so much of what they're saying is like, yeah, we're just drinking and playing video games, but also, like, questioning whether or not that's even a good thing, and sort of that like extra level of self-awareness to it that you usually don't get with, you know, skate punk bands singing about beer and video games and skateboarding.
It happened with NoFX, but it happened, like, the turn was super quick.
Yeah,
right?
It happened
because
later in their career.
Hard.
Yeah, it happened later in their career. And it's just like, these guys are still kind of, at least when this album came out, still kind of in their mid-20s. If you are a suburban kid in your mid-20s, unsure what the fuck you're doing with your life, that's what these songs are about. Even if it's not your exact story, like Drew was saying, like, drinking wasn't his game, but man, did he know these kids? Like, did he see this? I hung out
with these kids. These kids were my fucking friends.
Yeah, like the sort of the way you feel lost when you're in your mid-20s. And you're not really sure where you're going. I think it captures that. On the music side, they are really decent players for punk rock. You know, a genre, where often gets derided because people can barely play instruments. There's no, like, 4-chord only downstroke punk on this. There's lots of influences beyond that. The drums are really good. Punk rock drums are like one of those things that is so easy to do poorly, and very rarely done well. And I feel like they really accentuate everything. And, you know, there's not a lot of oohs and ahs, but there is a lot of gang vocals and little doubled harmonies on the chorus and stuff. And I love that. You know, we saw these guys live. It was one of those things where like you're one song into a band you've never heard of set and you're like, I have to Google this so I remember to go listen to everything they've ever released when I get home. And that was exactly what it was for me leaving Peelander-Fest. Was like, I needed to hear more. And it was, you know, at that time they only had their first album out, which is also excellent. But when this came out, for me, like their first album is a lot more straightforward punk. It's a lot more like, you know, buzzsaw guitar kind of stuff. This one is definitely like more mature, grading on that curve. But it was one of those things where I wasn't like, the first time I ever listened to it, I was like, is this still like the fun skate punk band that sings about drinking? And then you listen to it and you're like, yes, they just have grown up just a little tiny bit. And that's, I think, why it worked for me, because it does really, like, it's not how I feel about the world now, but it absolutely is how I felt about the world when I was in my mid-20s.
Yeah. Getting into the key tracks, we're talking about there's a few of them, but they go by fast. But still hanging out after all these years, kind of like a nice little, you know, like us. We're still hanging out after all these years, and it's pretty fantastic. But it is a nice opener. It kind of hits you with the thesis of the album really easily. Of just like, this is the sound. This is a chunk of the sound that you're gonna get. Also, it hits you with the Canadianness right away. With the Tomorrow and Sorrow, which is pretty fantastic. The Polynesian is a fun little a bit of storytelling song. It is very much like they like I'm gonna tell you a story punk rocker that kind of like borrows from like a couple other genres, but it's also done well. Skate 2 has a nice like intensity. It also has a great name. And again, fun stories. Passed Out is your dead end job anthem. Which is you know fitting for the modern era. And Adult Party, which I figure is the song that probably is the weirdest to listen to in that private school, which is like rich kids fuck off. If there's anybody in the crowd, go somewhere else. Rich kids go to hell. Like that was a fun part of it. But you know, it's about being at boring adult parties that end before midnight or around midnight, and which you know is an interesting subject matter. Yeah, David, what would be some of the key tracks for you?
I thought 65 Nickels was okay.
All right. Yeah. Drew, what would be some of the key tracks for you?
Still hanging out after all these years. Like I said, I know these dudes. Not these dudes, but I know these dudes. I miss these dudes a lot. I need to check in on them and be a better friend sometimes to these dudes. But definitely have a lot of these kind of dudes in my past, and I get it. The Polynesian, like PT said, this definitely gives me those, like, there is a time-tested tradition, not so much in some punk rock, but it comes a lot in ska, of the, hey, here's a story about, like, a punk dude or a rude boy or something. Time Bomb, Message to You, Rudy. It is a time-tested thing, and it works. This one is really good at painting that story, that word picture. The guitar has a twang, and I was sitting here writing my notes tonight, and it reminded me of something, and I couldn't place it, and I didn't know why, and like something like kept playing in the back of my head. Not like this exactly, but a feeling. If the Gaslight anthem is Bruce Springsteen but done punk rock, this song specific, not the album, but or the band, but this song specifically feels like punk rock Bryan Adams in a way. Like Five and Dime Story, like
I don't even hate that. I don't even hate that comparison.
Like,
it kind of makes a little bit of sense.
Right? The Polynesian, like, if you take these lyrics and like change them up just a little bit, it could be a Bryan Adams like fucking twangy ass 80s song. It's fucking weird. And I want to see a wolf. If we're gonna do weird comparisons, this would be that Guitar Hero song that would like have a really good note chart. Everybody would like it, but it would be a bonus song because it's only 1 minute and 20 seconds, and you can't put a 1 minute and 20-second song into like the regular set list. But you could tell the devs loved this song and just wanted to say like, "Hey, you should check out this band," like they did with a few other bands in the past, and it would end up in Guitar Hero if Guitar Hero existed. If anybody even remembers what Guitar Hero is, if they're not 30, so
Rock band,
fucking kids.
Fucking shout out to Harmonix. Well, yeah, Harmonix is getting that Fuser money. I think that is Harmonix. Patrick, what would be some of the key tracks for you?
I'll start out with Drinking Days. For me, this was and I wasn't even drinking much summer 2019, but this was like my song of that summer. It just like it is. It just reminds me of my mid-20s in all the right places, and it's probably about as mature a song about alcoholism as you're going to get in a punk album, and it very much like about hanging out with your friends and everything, and good guitars, good drums, just sort of like the things I like out of punk these days. The Polynesian, I like this song so much I almost want to visit the Wisconsin Dells. I know there's nothing there. I don't like Wisconsin particularly, but like it does capture like the northern Midwest in a way, like specifically that part of like rural ass, Wisconsin, UP, Michigan, goatees, tall cans, camo pants, and Packers fans. Like it is, you can picture those people and sort of the things you would get there. I Want to See a Wolf. It's a great nonsense punk song. And also, who doesn't want to see a wolf? Like, and it's silly. It's, less than 90 seconds long, but it's fun on how it gets there. And then the closing track, Thirsty and Humble, which I think is the like Pkew 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 or Pew 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 manifesto.
Yeah.
And it very much encompasses their vibes of like they just want to play music with their friends and play video games and drink and have fun and not worry too much. It has a really fun like we're gonna just put all the Meedly Me's and Chugga Chuggas and Bendy Boys guitar solo at the end, and like people like talk about like rock music being dead and whatnot, and it definitely like I like a little guitar solo once in a while. I don't need like a 9-minute Steve Vai song where it's just one long guitar solo, but like, give me 20 seconds of someone shred and I'm happy about it. It's just, I suck at guitar, but I like listening to people who don't suck at guitar, but I could say good stuff about everything on this album. I really like it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let's bring it back around the horn and talk about some conclusive thoughts. David, what would be your conclusion on this album as a whole?
Okay. So, splitting my childhood in a major urban city and the suburbs, like Drew said, I knew a couple of these dudes. I did. And when I saw these dudes, coupled with everything else in my life, that's when I knew I needed to get the fuck out of that town, to the point where I joined the military to get out of that town. I listened to this album a couple of times. The first go around, it got me in a not so good place. It just wasn't the right vibe mentally. It just wasn't good. So I gave it another spin out of necessity for the podcast. And it just reminds me of what I saw about by the time I was in my early 20s, I was well on my way. And if you by chance go back to your hometown to visit and you see some of those people that you knew in high school and they're still in the exact same place, you're kind of like, what the hell? For as much as y'all talk about how much you hate this place, you're not doing anything to get out of it. And that's kind of the vibe I got from this. This is a really hard listen for me. It was really, really hard. Because it had a little bit of peaked in high school energy. And I just don't get down with that at all. It was well produced. I could hear the bass and drums, which in a rock album I could always appreciate. But yeah, overall, in the words of somebody else, I don't hold with it.
Yes.
And in my opinion, the people in these songs, they are not aging gracefully.
Yep. Yep. Drew, how would you conclude on this album as a whole? Mute it again.
Yep. There's a certain feeling in my youth that comes up with bands like this and like this style of punk rock. It's something where I have a fondness for it. Deej is right. There's a certain, like, not anger or sadness at like the situation they're thinking about, but a confusion. But that's also, I guess, like part of why like I like checking in with like this genre every once in a while and this milieu, as it were. Just because the kids are still like the kids. These guys are in their mid-20s.
The youths.
The youths, as it were, are still singing about angst, right? They're still singing about like, I'm in a bad situation. I know I am. I don't know how I'm going to get out of it later, but like, fuck it. This is how I'm living now. Whatever. This is what I'm going to do. And like, that's something that like, there's always jokes about like the kids these days or losing some sort of sense of this, that, or the other thing. And it's bands like these, I think, that remind me that like, nah, the youths are still youths. There's still this type of stuff going on. And I think that's good. Like, I think there should always be this sort of feeling, because that's what sort of being a teenager to early, like mid to early 20s sort of age range, I think is a lot of figuring out yourself. And this is the people who fall through the cracks sometimes, can be these type of people. So still having music to help those type of people realize that like, hey, it's a situation a lot of people are in, like, live with it, but like, yes, do better eventually. Like, don't just be this guy. And I think that if this is any indication, and from what I'm gathering from the representatives from Texas and Florida, it is something where NoFX made like we said earlier, me and Swagger, NoFX made a pivot, but they made a hard pivot, because they got angry about politics real quick, and that's when, like, I think Fat Mike was like, oh, hey, I can't be, like, a drunk douchebag. Like, punching out the kid from Under Oath because I wanted to. Like, I can't be that guy because, like, I need to be the dude now because, like, my name means something and I should say something about, like, the world. Like, I shouldn't just be a drunk asshole, which I think is good overall. And, like, these guys may make a similar transition if parts of this album, like, play out. Now, they could stay stuck in this rut, but I wouldn't be surprised if 2-3 albums from now they're saying something about social politics or something like that. Is what I'm like. if the trajectory of this style of band says anything, your Pennywises and NoFXs of the world. I'm interested to see how they grow and where they grow. But as it stands, the youthful, angsty exuberance, I guess, for lack of a better word, is something I'm happy to sit in for a while because I had fun. Today I was like, oh hey, I forgot to tell you, you should definitely listen to this, and like started shoving it at people. And if I'm shoving it at people, I enjoyed it. So, with my dry ass throat.
Patrick, what would be your conclusion on this album as a whole?
As I can gush about it all day. You should go listen to their first album too. It's even more like beer and skateboarding than this. And there definitely is, like, it's fun to see them like grow as a band. They actually just late last year released like a little like 4-song really stripped down EP because they were gonna go do some tour dates, and then the world got bad yet again, and they got stuck in Canada and couldn't go anywhere. So they're just like, oh, I'll just record music. And I will definitely be listening to whatever they do next. And I think Drew's right in that, like, there is somewhere they're going. I don't know where it is, but I like that, like I am not, 25-year-old me anymore, obviously. But like, there are parts of that version of me that were fun and that are nice to look back on. And this album kind of reminds me of that era of my life, even though it came, long after it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think this is a solid sophomore release for Pkew Pkew Pkew. It is very much, I think, what everyone has been pointing out, including what David has been saying, of like people stuck in a rut, people stuck in a place, people stuck in habits. It's an exploration of that. I think you start to see them like explore how that is harmful to them in this album, and it's fantastic to see, and it does get you excited to see where they're gonna go. They're a fun punk rock band, and they're a fun show to go, fun band to see live. As you know, this is a big reason why they got on our radar, was just watching them jam out live on the same show with a band that lit their drums on fire, which is notable that this is one of the bands that we remember, where the other band that lit their drums on fire, which I still can't remember the name of.
I was there to see Peelander-Z and American Sharks, and these guys were the ones I'm like came home loving.
Yeah, and those people were great too. But yeah, this has a lot of fun in it. There's a lot of like exploration of feelings in it. I think getting the opinions of the round is going to be useful for everyone to decide if you're going to enjoy it. But it's definitely worth noting what it is exploring and what it is challenging. But otherwise, it is a very fun, straightforward punk album, and I think it is definitely a band in Pkew 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 that I think is going to grow really well, and it's going to do really well. And Canada is cool. in Ontario in particular, from what I hear. But yeah, those are our thoughts on Pkew Pkew Pkew's optimal lifestyle. It's hard to I imagine it's hard for people to include that K in that pew pew pew. Or so you could also go with Pkew 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 or Koopa Koopa Koopa, whichever you prefer. Yeah, those are our thoughts, and now we get to the main event of the evening, the moment we've all been waiting for. Our haiku reviews. We sum it all up in poetic form. The 575. Do the damn thing. Let's get down to the nitty gritty. Haiku numero uno. David, what is your haiku?
35 minutes. Pop punk for 20-somethings? Time to grow up, bro.
Mm-hmm. Drew, what is your haiku?
The sound of my youth, but with a refreshing twist. Punk rock is alive.
Mm-hmm. Patrick, what is your haiku?
Punk for partying. Some nice Canadian boys. I miss live music.
Nice. My haiku: Canadian punks sing drunken mayhem anthems with a sincere heart. Yeah, those are our thoughts on Pew Pew Pew's optimal lifestyles, which you can find on our Spotify playlist. Play Record Breakers, the home game. Do your due diligence and your due diligence. Follow along at home. Do your homework, as it were. On that Spotify playlist will be next week's record, and it's going to be provided by David. David, what have you got for us next week?
Petey Rave, I will ask you. Old, new, or weird?
I wish I could say BNC, but new.
Very well. This band came out with their second album in 2021 as a part of a movement in London that is trying to prove that rock is in fact not dead. The band is called Black Midi, and it is their 2021 album, Cavalcade.
Mm-hmm. So you can, of course, find that on our Spotify playlist. Play Record Breaker the home game. Check it out there. But yeah, other than that, you can, of course, find us all over the internet. You can find us all over the internet.
Petey is at Petey Rave. I'm at Call Me DJM. Drew is at XDrews4X, and Swagger is at The Swagger.
Yes. And the show is at 4 Record Breakers. That's the number 4 Record Breakers. RecordBreakersPodcast.com. RecordBreakersPodcast@gmail.com. If you want to send us email feedback. Rebelli.net for this and other shows, including Through the Tomes, and whatever else we decide to kind of throw out there in the future. Rebelli TV on Twitch and on YouTube. But check us out on Twitch as we like to stream these podcast recordings live, and we also do our D&D show. And I do some gameplay streams, including playing The Witcher 3 with Daisy coaching me. Old Daisy Hibbard coaching me in the ways of The Witcher, and it's been a pretty fun stream, and I'm so glad that she kind of egged me on to get back into that game. It was a fun game. But you go check those out. Check out all the streams. Check us out live. Rebelli TV on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel there. Like, share, do all the things. Give us a review. Give us some positive feedback if you can. But yeah, thank you for being with us. We love you very much. Until next time, hasta los huevos.
Toodaloo.
Luke #find.
Fighting.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.